Welcome to our podcast, Where Do We Go? Where we bring in guests to have conversations with high schoolers that are both relatable and informative regarding the idea of female leadership. I'm Kylie, and I'm the founder of the organization and club WeGo, and I'm so glad that you decided to listen to our podcast today. WeGo stands for Women Empowerment and Global Opportunities, and our mission is to cultivate the skill set students will need in order to foster a new generation of strong leaders that will make changes in a field that they want to take on. Because the stage is set for girls and women everywhere. We go.
Okay, so welcome to the first episode of our podcast, Where Do We Go? Today, we're joined by not only one special guest, but we have two today. We have Chef Michelle Karr-Ueoka and Chef Mark Noguchi, or better known as Chef Gooch. I'm Kylie. I'm a ninth grader and the founder of the club WeGo at Karr-Ueoka, and I'm joined by two of my friends.
Hi, I'm Sonia. I'm 15 and I'm in ninth grade.
Hi, I'm Henry. I'm 14 and I'm also a freshman.
Henry.
Yeah, and then we'll let our guests introduce themselves, what they do, and then basically just have a conversation. I'll let you go first, Gooch.
No way, man. Come on. You gotta go first. That amazing fish first.
No. I'm Michelle Karr-Ueoka, chef of the restaurant and graduated from 1999.
And I'm Mark Noguchi, otherwise known as Gooch or Chef Gooch. Michelle is my dear classmate from small kid time. We have known each other seriously since preschool. Yeah. I found a preschool picture of us. The proud father of two, and the co-founder with my wife of Pili Group and Chef Hui.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we can start.
So have you faced any financial challenges opening the restaurant, and what tips do you have?
Is that all for me?
I guess for both of you.
For us right now, ever since March, we take out due to the whole COVID pandemic. It's been challenging. For me, a lot of it is want to keep as much staff as possible. We've had to lay off quite a few of our staff due to the situation at the restaurant. But we have been doing takeout for about 6 months. We will probably continue to do takeout until next year when we try to open back. But a lot of it, the decision was to stay closed for the safety of our staff as well as the public. But for me, it makes me happy. Cooking has always been a way for me to feel like making other people happy, the public. So we enjoy helping the farmers, the ranchers, and showcasing all the local companies in the dishes that we create.
I think to Michelle's credit, I out of all the restaurants that we saw pivot, and Michelle, I'm not blowing smoke up your butt. I mean it. MW restaurant really went with the flow. They have an incredibly strong takeout program, and that says a lot because for a lot of us as chefs, takeout food is not our first, and just to be honest, it's not our first, avenue of how we want to feed people, especially if you put so much into a restaurant. It's very hard to translate what we do on a plate into a box. But I think that I've seen that with Michelle and her crew, with Andrew Lay and Ping the Lady. There are another ones. They embraced the challenges and stepped up, and I think that is a testament to also how they do business. The MW group, they're relentless and they're dedicated. They are some of the hardest working people that I know, and if I didn't believe it, I just wouldn't have said that. Having said that, the margins of working up a restaurant are incredibly narrow. A very real statistic is that you will net 5 to 10 cents on your dollar in your first 5 years. And that's real. Um, I think that you know, for Pili Group, we were real fortunate. We've never taken a loan out, and while we did have our financial challenges as well, in a nutshell, what caused us to close our restaurants was my mother getting cancer, and we kind of had this heart to heart of what was important. See, fast forward to today, and what I tell everyone is that I think that my mother died to save our lives because doing what we do as Chef Hui and even the privilege that I have sharing time with all of you at Puno now, there is no way possible that I would have been able to do that had we still had our restaurants. So there are moments where I miss that camaraderie and the certain um, you know pleasures that we get out of the stress and the time and amount of work that we put in. Michelle, I'm sure could attest to it as well. I've always been, kind of looked at myself as like a chef, for the people. To me, the relationships that I've been able to cultivate with friends and colleagues meant so much more than four walls. So I guess in that retrospect, I feel fortunate that I still get to do what I love in a very strong capacity and still see Michelle. I probably see Michelle more than I used to. We probably see each other more than we used to. So
So there's this one particular question that we ask like every time, and so actually I think Chef Gooch actually answered it, but maybe we can ask this time to Chef Michelle, if you could answer what is one woman that has made an impact on your life and has inspired you.
Wow, one. That's so hard. I've had so many people who have influenced me in so many different ways. But I'll probably say my grandma. I had two grandmas, and one was from Tokyo, another one was from Okinawa, and they shared with me their love for cooking, the love for making people happy, and I think that's what drew me to become a chef is the way that my grandparents brought the whole family around the table, and it was a way for us to enjoy and share each other's company and tell a lot of the stories of about them so that we could pass it on to the future generations. And she also had a great work ethic. They were both hardworking, dedicated, and really instilled in me good core values.
give us such a strong connection. I could very easily say my mother. She's a strong one. When I was thinking about it right now, I think three of the most important women in my life are my mother, my wife, and also, believe it or not, Auntie Wendy. So I'm going to talk about Auntie Wendy. And what inspires me about Auntie Wendy is she she was incredibly compassionate to me when I started. If you understand that, even though a lot of people think that I fell in naturally into the Puno community, that wasn't the case at all. I was really intimidated. Um, I definitely felt like I had no idea what really I was doing there. And she kept telling me like, "Don't worry, it'll be okay. Don't worry." And it's easy to celebrate people when they're stellar and when they're just like just putting out the best work. But I think it takes a particular maturity and it takes a certain amount of compassion where you recognize that a person has potential and you're willing, despite everything else going on in your life, because she does. She's a director of CLC, so she's like herding cats all day long, and she's got to herd Uncle Gooch, and teach him everything on how to digitally change his withholdings on his taxes to helping me through like the letter days and understanding how they worked again. So um, I do feel incredibly grateful, to have her as a mentor. She pushes me to be the best person I can be. Um, and even when she like scolds me, she does it in this like very motherly way that I appreciate. So yeah, Wendy Camilla is one of my female I look up to. My females I look up to.
Kind of follow up on Henry's question about the current difficulties. Due to the pandemic, food insecurity has risen. Could you talk a bit about your operation, Chef Lee, and how you help families during this pandemic?
Sure, sure. Um, Once again, amazing women in my life. I need to give credit to Amanda, to my wife Amanda, who takes her and our team take care of so much. And Michelle's nodding because she's been a part of this correspondence, and she understands how much work they do. When spring break first happened, when they first announced spring break was going to be extended back in March, our first concern was how are kids going to get lunch, because pre-COVID statistics were that 1 in 5 children rely on their public school lunch as being their primary meal of the day. Okay, with COVID, it's surpassed 25%. So we were fortunate because immediately Amanda started to reach out to a lot of our colleagues in like food security and food sustainability. Not chefs, but like the think tanks, even behind that. I started to reach out to our chef community. Actually, Chef Michelle was definitely one of the first that I called too. And the moment that our friends started to close their doors, by I think 36 hours after they announced the shutdown, things in walk-ins and refrigerators were going to go. So within 36 hours, we had formed a partnership with Pacific Gateway Center, and at that time, Aloha Harvest, who helped us to aggregate all of this food that was going to go bad, get it to PGC, and instead of like me forming a kitchen to cook, we realized that we could serve our community better by taking these thousands of pounds of product, not sitting on it, but immediately getting out to communities that need it. Um, you know, when you cook long enough, and when you commit yourself long enough, I think, to a movement or a purpose or a cause, you will inevitably create a larger network. So once people started hearing what we were doing, we started getting more calls and then more calls. And by the end of the first week, Amanda and her team had already pivoted to not just looking for donations, but now trying to figure out where's the funding going to come from, where we can support our farmers by buying from them. And that's where we're at now. So Chef Hui is this group of both committed, what, it's been like 36 restaurants now around the state of Hawaii. We have outreach on Oahu, Hawaii Island, Maui, and Kauai. And we've done 2 drives on Molokai as well, one on Lanai. Um, so we're fortunate to have a network like that. And I think that that's how we are going to somehow survive together, is remembering that we're all in this together. If you look at MW's takeout menu, they got a great little sidebar where they have vegetables and produce and products that they sell as well from their farmers, and it's brilliant. It is actually probably one of the best secret deals in town. So for instance, getting like beautiful, clean peeled onions for $2 a pound is ridiculous. Nobody does that. But like Michelle said, it's just a way for they're not making a ton of money for their farmers, but they're doing something, and they're spreading the word. So.
And part of the reason why we started that whole marketplace was to help keep our farmers around, because that's what makes Hawaii more sustainable for the future. And when the pandemic first hit, a lot of the farmers came to us because places were closing. They needed somewhere for the products to go. And so when we devised our takeout menu, everything is based on what the local farmers have, because our feeling and our thought process was we need to support them. And that's the way that we do it. And Gooch, thank you for doing Chef Hui and with Amanda. You guys are amazing. Thank you for helping serve the community.
You're welcome.
What do you think is like the importance of reaching out and helping the local community?
I'll let you go first.
Okay. We live on an island, and our resources are finite, and I also believe strength in numbers. So it's kind of with all that talk, with all this talk this year about like immigrants and being proud that you're an immigrant, we all come from immigrant roots. Almost all of us. And what I see is I see us, whether we realize it or not, going back to our immigrant roots. We're leaning into each other. We are quicker to call each other for for help, or we're quicker to lean into each other to check in and see how we're doing. So what I see about the importance of keeping it local and buying it local is that if we can make a change within our community on this little cluster of islands in the middle of nowhere, where for reasons of conditioning we rely so much on import. If we can make that little change and show that it's possible, imagine what people in the States can do, or in countries that have more resources, have more space. So I look at the work that we do important because not only do we serve our community, but we also have the precedence and the ability to set an example. And that's really important.
No, I totally agree with Gooch. And I think, when you think about how much of the imports that come from the mainland, it's about 85 to 90%. When a natural disaster happens, what happens to Hawaii? Like when the pandemic first hit, you couldn't find toilet paper, you couldn't find flour, you couldn't find yeast. So it learned, to me, I saw more how we needed to be more sustainable for the future. And how that's going to happen is we have to invest in the people of Hawaii, and by becoming more sustainable as a whole state, then we help keep the people in Hawaii, we help the community more, because what happens is the dollar that you spend on local business stays in Hawaii versus part of it going to a mainland by an international investor. So when you think about the whole economic cycle of money and where the money goes in Hawaii, the more it stays in Hawaii, the more it also helps to go to different charities, and help the community more. And for me, it's about during this time, we need to all support each other and buy local and help each other, because the only way we're going to get through this is we all help each other out.
So like what I'm hearing is like a ripple effect from like and then kind of like branching out larger, farther away.
Yeah, that pebble in the water.
Yeah.
So this is for the both of you, but what advice would you have for someone wanting to follow the same career?
Go Gooch, you first.
You got your stereotypical answer? No. You mean like in food? I feel that in our industry today, it's a broad new world out there. Everything from a better quality of living for our back house and our front house to to sort of breaking the glass ceiling in kitchens. I think that it's a brand new day. I, for one, and I'm sure Michelle, you could probably attest to it. I don't think any of us thought that something that I do would have been like a career choice for a cook or a chef back then. But we're real fortunate in that we're in this time where we can write our own careers pretty much. If any of you remember Mike Latham's first speech when he in school, he talked about how it is our job as faculty to train students for careers that don't exist yet. And I think that applies to not just young students, but that applies to professionals across the board. However, if you ever take one of my classes, you'll hear me say often that a recipe is just a guideline. Just like life is just a guideline. There's no strict rules. However, before you start to change the rules, you need to understand how the recipe works. Before you start to get creative with how you cook a chicken, you got to be able to roast it first. 1,000 times, right, Michelle? Before you make laminated dough, you better learn the concept of just baking bread. And I think that the space is wide open, but you got to be able to put in the work. you gotta be able to put in the work.
I agree with you totally. And a lot of what drew me to become a chef slash pastry chef was my love for food. I love the way I can cook, and then seeing whatever I cook creates a smile or creates a memory on someone's face. That's probably why I chose to be a chef and what drove me to do that as a career. But a lot of it is like how Gooch said that a recipe is just a guideline. It's true. I think a lot of it is just as you journey in life, there's different steps that you take, and sometimes you don't know where the road might lead you. And I think that that's the whole part of life experience. And I think for me, when I train like young chefs, is to instill the fundamentals of cooking in them. That the stronger the foundation you have, the more creative, the more different opportunities you are going to have in life. But it's about building a strong foundation. Just like when you build a house, you want a strong foundation underneath, and then that the house.
A real quick story to add on to Michelle's was I was with Michelle's old boss, Chef Alan Wong, one evening, and he was talking, and we had dinner, and it was at Food and Wine, and he said, you guys are real talented, but you know what your problem is? I'm like what, chef? What's our problem? And he goes, you guys are so creative these days, but you're forgetting the basics. And right, Michelle? Like chef was right on, and he totally was. Is that so many young chefs are hyper creative, but then when you ask them to go back to the classics, you ask them to go back to the foundations, and it'll get a little fuzzy. But what Chef Michelle said is on point. You got to know the basics. You got to know your classics. You got to know where it comes from.
You told me about asking you to ask you about how Chef Michelle feels about you and swing. So maybe.
Oh no, you gotta ask Chef Michelle that.
Yeah.
Why are you gonna deny it? One of my fondest memories of Japan, we always tease each other about this, was second grade, and we were playing on the playground, and he wanted to ride the swing, and I was on the swing. And as I was going, he pushed me off the swing, and I teased him because he was a big bully, because he was taller than me. But then I always tease him now because I'm taller than him.
Yeah, you are. Right. I'm sorry. That was nice.
I love you, Gooch.
I love you too. I used to deny it. Not gonna do that. I don't really remember it. That was second grade, but Michelle Karr is not one to lie. So
in both of your opinions, at what point in the culinary field do you think people are most likely to give up, and what would you suggest to them?
I always tell people if I had $1 for every time I wanted to quit, I would be very rich right now. But just in life, in general, you're always going to find obstacles, but it's your persistence, your perseverance, and your dedication to follow that dream to make it a reality. I call it little bumps in the road, but that's what's going to get you to whatever dream you want to accomplish, whether it be becoming a chef or becoming a writer or whatever it may be. My theory in life was always, if you dream it, you can achieve it. And I have been blessed enough with so many mentors and supporters and friends, like Gooch, who always encouraged me when I was struggling or I felt like I wasn't going to make it. I always had a support system that helped me get there.
I read that when you applied for a job at the French Laundry, you sent a toothbrush with your application. And so I was wondering maybe you could talk about that story and also kind of like go back to what you just visited and talk about like the importance of like grit and perseverance when you want to achieve your passion.
Recently, I have the book and the shovel. The toothbrush, I used it to clean touch mold. But long ago, when I first applied, it was in 1988. When I went to the CIA, you have to do an externship. And so one of my teachers asked me where I wanted to go. And I said, I want to go out to French Laundry and study with Chef Taylor. And at that time, I didn't have much experience, but I knew that's where I wanted to go. And I knew that he would have a whole stack of resumes and that he could only choose one extern at a time. And how would I differentiate myself from them? So I actually took a toothbrush, I mailed it in with my resume and a letter, and I explained to him that this isn't a letter from your dentist. It's a letter to show my desire, my dedication. And if I have to scrub toilets with a toothbrush for 6 months just to have one day in the kitchen, I would do it. And to my surprise, 2 days later, I got this really thin envelope. And as a senior applying for colleges, you always want the thick envelope because you had to return the material back. So I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't want to open the envelope because I was like, it's thin, I probably got rejected. And then my mom's like, just open it. If you got accepted, great. If you didn't, it's okay. You at least tried. And that's the main thing, is that you tried, you gave it a go. Because if you don't try, you're still not going to get it, and that's the beauty of life. And so I did get it. I spent 6 months there. And he actually gave me, this is a shovel used for gardening, because when I was there, one of my things that he taught me was to learn how to grow vegetables that we would pick and use in the dishes in the evening. So for me, the shovel represents our time together of teaching someone like me who didn't know what a hoe was, and gardening tools, because I knew golf and that was about it. And so to make a long story short, it also meant that in life you have to dig into your journey and go down to the roots, and you're going to build your root, and then you're going to see something grow in the future.
What do you think is the most important things to have to be successful in a kitchen?
I think that the most important things to have in a kitchen are the qualities that Michelle just said. You need to have grit and perseverance. You got to be committed. I agree. Then it's, Henry, this is kind of going back to what Michelle was talking about. There are many times, that you want to quit, but we grow the most through change, right? Michelle, you heard it. Change equals stress equals growth. It's not cliched. It's completely true. We grow the most, and I also tell my cooks that your truth of character, who you really are, it shines the most when nobody's looking. It's those moments where you need to slice a case of mushrooms and you are so tired, or you got to clean ramps and it's 1 a.m. and you really could take that last pound of ramp and you could probably bury it at the bottom of the trash can because everyone's gone, nobody would see it, but you'd know. So what are you gonna do? I have a quick story to add on to Michelle. Michelle, I don't know if I ever told you this, but because of you and Wade, you guys got me a audition opportunity at Per Se that I turned down. So when I left, when I was leaving New York and coming home, I was looking for a job, and I had wanted to stage. Stage is a French word to basically you work in a kitchen for free. And in Europe, the classical stage system was chef would usually house you, so you get food and shelter to work in a kitchen, and that's the trade-off, and you learn. Here in the States, you usually don't get a place to stay very often, but you audition for a stage. So I had never thought of myself as French Laundry or Keller material. But both Michelle and her husband Wade on separate occasions had told me how their time with Thomas Keller changed their life. So I wrote this letter, or I wrote an email, and I sent it off, and I said, my name is Mark Noguchi. I'm a young cook, just graduated from Culinary America, and I'm moving home, but I have a couple weeks, and I would be honored if I might have the chance to be a stage. I said, and very similar to Michelle, I was like, and if it means sweeping the floors every night, no problem. And I sent my resume, and I said, thank you very much. I said, I never thought I would be writing this email, but two of your former cooks, Michelle Karr and Karr-Ueoka, mentioned how their time with you guys changed your life. And at that time, I was still shopping for a job. And one of my old chef instructors, his brother, was the executive chef at this place called Kona Village Resort on Hawaii Island. So we've been going back and forth with this. And then finally, Chef Mark said, hey, when you get home, we would love to have you join our team. And about 30 minutes later, I get this email from per se HR. And they said, dear Mark Noguchi, thank you for your letter. Chef was very intrigued, and he'd like to talk to you more. However, we don't have any stage opportunities. However, we are looking for a commis, which is an entry-level cook, a commis and garde manger, so the cold station. And if you are interested, we'd like to talk to you about coming down for a possible interview. And I wrote back, and I think I wrote back something short and smart ass, like, you're joking, right? And then HR's immediate response was, no, we're not. And I cried because I had just accepted a job back at home at a hotel. So here it was. Opportunity for a 3 Michelin restaurant, one of the top 50 in the world. Go back home to a good paying, but just a hotel job for a chef that I admired, but still yet. New York, back home. New York, back home. And I emailed HR and I said, I'm flattered, but about 45 minutes ago, I accepted a position in Hawaii. And I said, I need to honor that position. Never told Chef Mark what happened until about a year later. HR's response was, Chef wanted to let you know that if you ever change your mind, please let us know. I appreciate your integrity. And I printed that email and I saved it to this day. And so Michelle, thank you. But, even Chef said, why didn't you take the job? And I said, I told you I'm coming to you. And so, Henry, it takes grit and you got to be dedicated, because I tell you, that decision right there changed the course of my life.
Oh, wow. Okay, this question actually comes from Caitlin, and she's a freshman, and she wants to know, if you could do anything without being afraid of failing, what would that thing be?
Oh, that's a good one.
I thought too.
Wow, if I could do anything without failing, is, I think, how would I say it? You fail forward. Like sometimes when I have new cooks who come to me, they're so afraid of failing or making a mistake that they don't want to try. And I always say, you have to try, because in life, there's nothing wrong if you fail or you make a mistake. That's how you're going to learn. So like I always tell people, if you make a mistake and you fail, don't think of it as a negative. Think of it as a positive, because you learn something you would have never ever learned before. So that's maybe why part of me is such a hard question, because I don't mind failing, because that means I'm putting myself into an unknown territory, and I'm going to hopefully learn something new, and that's for me how I look at my most memorable experiences. It was a journey of things that I've done, and you put yourself out there. And it is sometimes hard to put yourself out there, because whether people might judge or anything, but those who are really your true friends, your supporters, your mentors, they're going to want to see you put yourself out there to try and achieve the dreams that you want.
I think for myself, and I understand where the question is coming from. It's like if you didn't have to worry, but the one thing that I learned too is like if you're not worried about it, it's too easy. You know, it's I oh man, you know, as Chef Marvelous, I lost 30 pounds in 6 months. I was scared every day. You know, I thought I was getting fired every day. And working for Chef Kevin was like Chef Kevin was old school. You got things thrown at you and screamed at and everything under the sun. It happened. And but I became such a strong cook out of that, you know, and in my marriage and being a father, I worry. I hope I'm doing I hope I'm doing it right, you know, and I'm probably falling short here and there, but fear we need to we and Michelle, I'm so glad you brought that up. We need to we need to encourage our community. We need to somehow change that narrative that fear and failure is a bad thing. You know, I agree. Like that's how we grow. You know, and you know, Kylie, Sonia, and Henry, and the rest of your peers. Um, you as young student body leaders have the ability to leverage the things that you learn in times like this, and then insert that into your daily conversation. Not that you got to get in a soapbox and tell everyone like, "Oh, you got to fail forward." That's what Chef Michelle said. But you know, and just understand that anything is possible through failing forward. You know, I've had some epic fails that that have taught me incredible life lessons, and I wouldn't change any of that in a heartbeat. Not even some of my most painful experiences would I choose to change.
You know, coming from like an outside perspective, can you comment about like the roles women play in the culinary field and what you hope to see from women in your field?
So this was at a very well-known restaurant. Um, it's closed now, so I can say what it is. So Spotted Pig. Spotted Pig was a hot spot for everybody and anybody in our culinary field. You know, that's where like so all the big name chefs came to hang out on the weekends, and if you were a young cook, you know, you wanted to hang out there too. So, and this was before Me Too. Okay, I was with a very close. I was with the younger sister of a very close friend, and we went to take her out to eat. We had a great dinner. We were hanging out at the bar, and then another Hawaii boy, Tony Liu, said he was coming, and he was bringing some chefs, and he brought this table, and there's this table there of some of the most famous chefs in the world. Um, no, Michelle, your boss wasn't there, but it was your boss's some of your boss's buddies, and one of them looks at Kaiulani and he goes, "Hey, sweet thing," pats his lap. "Hey, come sit over here." And she's like this. She's a tira from Molokai, and she just like gave it to him in the middle of Michelle, Friday night, 1 a.m. Spotted Pig is packed, and she's like calling this chef out outside. It was amazing. It was great, and that while she was just upset, and she was like, "F this guy," I can't believe this guy. Who the hell you think he is? To me, I was really shamed. I was so shamed that was Kaiulani's. She had heard me talk about New York for years, about how much I loved it, how much I loved the people that I worked with. And that was her first interaction with New York, our New York culinary community. So what I've seen, and that was 2005 or 2006, I think. And what I've seen from there are incredible moves forward. Michelle, I remember at one time Andrew's entire line was almost all women. Pignoli's at one time their entire line was almost women. And I see that the scope and the ability for women to kick ass, excuse my French, in the kitchen, um, is boundless. And I think most women make better cooks than men do because they just got more finesse than we do, and they have such a good sense of taste. And I think part of that is because women are the ones that bear children. Because if as men, if we're the ones that have to bear children, the world population would be like 25, like 75% less. But it is already innate, this sort of matriarchal sort of personality, or this sort of this matriarchal sense already. And in the same way, when we create food, you're caring for these dishes as you compose them and they go out. So I think there's something very similar in this other lines of motherly. I also see that finally there's a time where, as a woman or as a person who feels that you are being doing wrong, you can speak up now. Yes, there are still the boundaries. I'm not saying we live in a perfect world. I'm not saying that life is fair, because it's not. But I definitely see in 20 years that I've been cooking that I see a brave new world for women. I think that we will continue to see that. I think that we will always continue to need to, filter out the male jerks in our community. But collectively, if we check them, in the same way, Kylie and Sonia, if you're hanging out with friends in college or somewhere, and some guy is treating you in a way that is disrespectful and that you don't like, if you are surrounded by people that you trust, that you can speak up and they'll have your back. I feel that, Michelle, perhaps, back in the day, that was that whole like, don't rock the boat. You didn't want to get fired, or God forbid. I've heard stories from women who, when they speak up, they get pushed into a garmager, or like the lowest position in the kitchen, and you never see them again. That's BS. I see more opportunity, and so I'm very optimistic. I love seeing the women leaders, today's day and age.
So this question is from Bella. She's a freshman, and it's how do you grow in such a competitive industry such as the restaurant business?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
How do you grow in such a competitive industry such as the restaurant business?
A lot of it comes from what you have in your heart, and it all comes down to about your attitude and the dedication, the desire, and the persistence that you have. And yes, it is competitive. When you think about it, just like if you play sports or anything, right? Everything that you do, your daily practice prepares you for the next big game. And I think part of it is, I think for me, competition drives me to do better, because I always want to, but for me, it's also about driving myself to be better, driving our team to be better. But at the same time, the whole reason why I do what I do is to help others. And for me, I think that's the nurturing part of me that I've always wanted to live by, in the sense of why I chose this profession.
One other thing too is what Michelle said that's a very important key is that we are in competition with ourselves. We push ourselves, we push our team to push themselves as well. If you are operating a restaurant and your goal is like, oh, I want to, have the most sales, have the, busiest restaurant, have the most accolades because we're better than your next door neighbor, you're in it for the wrong reasons. When Senia was being built out, next to Pili and Lady, both chefs at separate times asked me, what should I do? I mean, what do you wish you should do? We've all been buddies for 10 years. Why does that change because you open up a restaurant? And, both of them were like, oh, yeah, you're right. That's kind of stupid to think that way. Yeah, there's no need. I mean, I get it. It's friendly competition. But at the same time, too, you're not competing so much against the other person as you're competing within yourself.
You've given us a bunch of amazing advice already. Thank you so much. But if you could give one or two pieces of advice to your high school self, this question comes from Esther Chan. What advice would you give to your past self?
Oh, me first? Okay.
Oh,
What
Karr-Ueoka.
advice would I give to my past self? Probably, I think when I was in high school, or maybe more intermediate, I always was so worried about what everyone else thought about me. And one of my teachers finally said, stop worrying about what everyone else thinks about you. Worry about what you think about yourself. If you need to make yourself happy, when you're happy with yourself, you have so much more to give to others. And I think when I decided to stop worrying about what other people thought of me, and I focused on myself and what I wanted to do, it helped me to become a stronger person inside because I learned to understand myself better.
If I had to give myself another piece of advice, I think it would be just to remind myself how important words are. You know, this was before we were in high school, before social media. And I think I was a sophomore or a junior, and we were going out to the movies, and we had picked up like my friend, and then his friend, and the these two girls are also friends, but we're all going. So it must have been a junior because one of us was driving and no one was driving as a sophomore. But what I remembered about that night was one of the girls was an exchange student from France, and she had a French accent. So me thinking that I was smooth was like, wow, you got a really nice accent. It's a great accent. And she's like, well, I think all accents are beautiful. And I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, some are more beautiful than others. Yeah, and then to my Korean buddy, I was like, like it sounds better in Korean. And he got real quiet. And I realized at that moment that I had hurt his feelings. And I was a product of bullying too, so I know what that's like. But what was really sad was that a month later he disappeared.
Oh, wow.
And so if I have one regret in life, was that is one person that I've never been able to apologize to. And that weighs on me to this day. I don't have very many regrets. That's a regret. So in addition to what Michelle says, to also remember that what we say holds weight. Because it's so easy to, right? It was an honest mistake back then. It wasn't meant to be malicious. I was trying to impress a girl. Stupid, lame. And instead I really hurt someone's feelings.
So I guess kind of like our last question to wrap up everything, and also like as a question that our listeners can think about, what would you like to see for high schoolers like us to do in the community?
As high schoolers, I think as high schoolers, as young adults, you have no idea the power and the ability to leverage that you have because you're so inundated with getting projects done and doing your homework and gotta write college letters and where do I go. This is amazing what is happening right now, sitting down here talking to all of you. So if there's one thing to share is that if you have a dream or something that you want to accomplish during this time in school, shoot it out there, because you can, and you can probably walk away from your high school career having been a lot more of a social activist that you wanted to be than you thought was possible. Go, Michelle.
No, you couldn't have said it better. It's such a memorable time, and put your out there, put your voice out there, because that's what creates a movement. How you can make change is through other people as well. So when you have other people who have the same voice as you, that's how things change for the future.
Okay, so if there's anything else that you want to share with us, but
Just a big thank you.
Very big thank you. Thank you for helping us and connecting us all together.
no, thank you for joining us today. It's so like not only is it like an inspiration to us, but also to everyone that gets to listen to just our conversation. I think it means a lot to us.
Well,
Thank you.
don't forget that you guys inspire us as well. When you have a dynamic group of students, it's so easy for us to get caught up in our daily routine. So to be able to do some of this, it's also like a sounding board. I know for myself, as I got to share, there were a lot of affirmations, little warm fuzzies that reminded me that, oh yeah, you're all right. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
This was awesome. That back and forth was awesome.
And if any of you guys have questions, please don't hesitate to ask or call. Spend a day in the kitchen, see what it's like. Just please let me know.
Yeah, and also if you could let the listeners know like where they can find you or reach you or learn more about you.
Well, you can find Chef Michelle Karr-Ueoka at FW Restaurant. She doesn't sleep. She's there pretty much 24/7. That's her day. Yeah. And you guys know where to find me. You'll hear me before you see me. So, hey. And for myself, when you're a sophomore, you can sign up for culinary chemistry. I co-teach that with Ms. De Pasquale. And please, even as things slowly start to open up, please find me on campus. My office is in the CLC with Auntie Wendy. And once we can start cooking on campus again, now that I know that that's something that you like, you should come and join me. And Kylie, Sonia, same thing for all of you. I promise there will be many opportunities to all cook together.
I'm currently stressed about school, and this gave me a much needed boost.
Us too, trust me.
Thank you for joining us and making time just out of your day to come and talk to us, and it means a lot.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning into our podcast, Where Do We Go? We hope that our guests inspired you as much as we were. Make sure to check out our website for more information about our organization, WeGo, as well as our Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify. We hope you have a great rest of your day and continue to lead and create positive change. This is Kylie, signing off. We'll see you next time.